Good morning, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the session 3 of the VLR-VSR Days. My name is Pire Otieno. I lead the water and sanitation team here at UN Habitat headquarters in Nairobi, Kenya. This session will focus on the role of local and regional governments as urban basic services providers and the connection with VLRs and VSRs. First of all, I would like to share some housekeeping rules. This session will mainly be done in English, but there is translation to English, French, Spanish, and Arabic. To access the AI interpretation tool, please scan the QR code on the screen. I will give participants a moment to do that. And remember to keep your mics muted when you are not speaking. We welcome you also to leave your questions and comments on the chat. We will make our best to have time for Q&A at the end of the panel. And this session will be recorded. So ladies and gentlemen, as urbanization increases, so do the pressures on local and regional governments to effectively provide urban basic services. To name only a few of their challenges, many of you know that the number of people experiencing water scarcity in cities is expected to double by 2050. Currently, fewer than 35% of cities in developing countries treat their wastewater. Additionally, 1.6 billion people worldwide live in inadequate housing, often lacking secure tenure. With almost 70% of the global population forecasted to live in urban areas by 2050, effective urban service delivery is not just important, it is essential for sustaining and improving the lives and livelihoods of the rapidly growing number of urban dwellers. Strengthening the effective and equitable delivery of services promotes economic growth and reduces inequality. It ensures that the most vulnerable communities are at the center of local and regional government responses. Well-managed cities with improved basic services contribute to peace and security, attract investment in people, and support just and democratic governance. In this context, voluntary local reviews, what we have abbreviated as VLRs, and voluntary subnational reviews, VSRs, have emerged as vital processes to help local and regional governments identify and prioritize the needs of their communities concerning urban basic services in alignment with the SDGs. By understanding the specific challenges faced in their local contexts, these governments can provide adequate solutions and safeguard their communities. The objective of our session today is to explore how VLRs and VSRs can enhance urban basic service delivery. We will focus on successful strategies for using subnational SDG reporting to improve critical services. We will also discuss the importance of inclusive and equitable service delivery and how these reviews can help local and regional governments make informed decisions that reduce inequalities and promote sustainable development. Our agenda for today is divided into 2 blocks. In the first block, we will explore how VLRs and VSRs inform on the needs of urban basic services. In the second block, we will discuss the role of local and regional governments as urban basic services providers. Now to the first block, which I am honored to moderate. For this first block, we have distinguished representatives from the city of Brisbane City Council in Australia, Udon Thani Municipality in Thailand, and Santa Fe Municipality in Argentina. Each speaker will present for 5 minutes, followed by a 5-minute Q&A session. And I would want to thank speakers again for being here with us today and for sharing their experiences. Our first speaker is Dai Kuri, the Executive General Manager for Brisbane 2032 Host City and Strategic Partnerships at Brisbane City Council, Australia. Brisbane's VLR provides a complete overview of existing sustainable programs and initiatives. Dai, the floor is yours to present the VLR of Brisbane and how it highlights the topic of urban basic services delivery.
Thank you so much, Pera. Thank you, everybody, for the opportunity to share with you today. I'm really pleased to share with you Brisbane City Council's journey. Gaia, if we could swap into the slides, that'd be great. Thank you. I wanted to start very quickly by just giving everybody else a sense of scale of the different sizes of Brisbane. So if we could move to the next slide, please. Brisbane City Council undertook our VLR last year and also had been working in UN Habitat's SDG Cities program. So we are Australia's fastest growing capital city. And we are, interestingly, quite large, certainly the largest city in Australia terms. And you can see on the screen that visual representation of the size of our city compared to Greater London, Greater Paris, and Los Angeles. Obviously, we are nothing near them in terms of population, but we are very significant in terms of our geographical size and therefore the services that we deliver as a city, which range all the way through into transportation services, which is unusual in Australia. One of the other key components to our city, of course, is that we are the host city for the 2032 Olympic and Paralympic Games, which does change that context around what we're planning for our future and how we plan to get there. Thanks, Gaia. The next slide, please. So if I look now at our VLR, for us, we started our journey, as I just said, our combined journey of SDG Cities and the VLR. We were awarded a silver recognition by UN Habitat in the SDG Cities program in November 22, and gold recognition in October last year, in October 23, and at the same time published our VLR. When we look at what were those basic urban services analysed as part of the VLR of our city, we had 4 very clear focus areas for the city. They were about resilience. How can our city continue to create opportunities for growth and economic resilience? In particular, there obviously around climate resilience. We have had 2 very substantial floods over recent years, but we've also had periods of dryness and, of course, the economic resilience needed as the world has seen through COVID. Our second theme is about being active, healthy, and green. Now, that's actually become a partnership between Council and the International Olympic Committee and UN Habitat, looking at active, healthy, and inclusive cities. But our focus areas there are about how do we continue to support the drive towards a healthier and more active Brisbane, with also that very strong focus we have on greening the city through the preservation of our natural environment. Our third theme is around the inclusivity, the diversity, and the equity of our city, and how we can explore how the people of Brisbane interact, how they access basic services, open space for culture, participation in cultural activities, and of course, representative and inclusive institutions. And our final theme in our VLR was about being livable and connected. How does our council create a city that is more livable, supports our residents in finding affordable and appropriate housing opportunities, and how do we provide them better connections through public transport. Public transport in many other cities in Australia is not provided by the City Council. It is in our case, so it is a very different service level. So we've looked at transport connectivity, the water and sanitation, the number of parks we have, things like education, healthcare. We looked very strongly at the data that we had as a council and what were we able to deliver and then monitor. We looked at things like the total track length of our public infrastructure, our parks, our roads. We looked at the proportion of the population with access to public space. We looked at things like air quality, proportion of food in the total waste stream. And in particular, we looked at our change in tree cover, because the percentage of our city dedicated to our natural environment is a very strong factor in one of our key strategies. So if we look very briefly at that data assessment process, sorry, next slide, Gaia. If we look at this now, you can see that what we've tried to do here is show how all of those indicators come together and how they come together from an SDG perspective and also from a UMF perspective. We've then looked at how does all of that get published, how do we share that information, and how do we track that. What we've done here in terms of what we would suggest as improvements to the VLR process would be about how we could access a different range of data sets. We're a very big council, but there's a lot of data sets that we currently don't have access to, and we're recommending that if we could, we would have a much better ability to publish data, but also potentially to feed up into national VLRs and potentially to share that information around the world. Next slide, thanks, Gaia. So in this one of the things I wanted to really show you is that we have been really working hard on how we tell this story around the world. So if we look at what sort of measures we're taking as a city to ensure that the VLR and the areas of focus that we've declared in that are sustained over time, what we've tried to do is be able to publish that data in a story map form that shows that progress of data over time. What we've done there is very much try to ensure that the commitments in our VLR are embedded into our major strategies. So we have a number of very key corporate strategies that actually embed the outcomes of our VLR, our council vision, and then our subsidiary strategies, Clean, Green, Sustainable Brisbane, our Inclusive Brisbane strategy, and as an example of our resilience approach, Brisbane's Flood Smart Future strategy. So these examples on the screen show how we're tracking those key targets and our data results over time, but also how we display those to the community to enhance their understanding of the SDGs and progress. This is an example of a data set and a dashboard we've built to show that and show that data spatially. So we're thinking it would help if we could all potentially have a set of an agreed set of data sets that we could share over time. And if I asked Gaia for our last slide, a very quick example of how we choose to try and embed those outcomes. This is a park that has been completely renovated over recent years. It picks up, you can see the before and after slides, a transformation from a concrete drain into a much more natural environment that still performs incredibly well through periods of flood, but also delivers, of course, its climate action, its clean water, its industry and innovation, and people attending there. And it's also a park called Hanlon Park, which has a second name, which is Baruda, which is a traditional Indigenous name for that area, in measure of our respect for our Indigenous and First Nations communities. Thank you so much for the opportunity to share very briefly our journey.
Thank you very much, Di, for this very comprehensive presentation. You have mentioned in the presentation how you embed these changes, your VLRs, into your strategies. and how you're tracking targets over time to share the progress with the communities. I have two questions that you could respond to. One is, what measures, apart from embedding them into strategies and monitoring, what measures can we take to ensure that the impact you are realizing through the VLRs are sustained over time? And number two, what improvements can be made to the VLRs themselves to inform better urban basic services planning over time?
Thank you so much for those questions. I think it's probably really important that we think about how we publish this sort of information. What we've tried to do is publish a document which has very clear targets so that the community, that the public can see what it is that we have committed to do. And I think that clarity, that transparency of publication of targets is really important if we are to have impact over time, because in many cases, in our case, if it's a formal council strategy, it is then embedded into those major decisions that government makes. So I think having the published transparent targets that then get embedded into the decision-making of the organisation over time has obviously the stronger impact compared to other situations. And I think if we talk about improvements that are possible over time, that's where I suggest it would be really interesting if perhaps there were some common data sets where we could all, potentially even region by region, we could be feeding those common data set results up into voluntary national reviews so that where instead of creating multiple reports and data sets, we've got a standard base and we feed those up into a subnational or national level.
Thank you very much. And you have donated 2 minutes to our next speaker. So from Australia, we go to Thailand. And Ms. Siriwarang Hompirom, I hope I get it right, is Secretary to the Mayor of Udon Thani. Thank you for being with us today. Udon Thani is finalizing its first VLR, which urban basic services are analyzed in that VLR. So the floor is yours, Ms. Siriwarang.
Yes, good evening from Thailand. Please show the slide for our city. Yes. We are from Thailand. Udon Thani City Municipality is located in the northeastern region of Thailand, 50 kilometers from Thai and Laos border. The population of 2024 is approximately 115,000. The total area is 47.70 square kilometers. Our VLR was started in June 2023 with support from UN Habitat. During the process, we had a training workshop to identify priority SDGs and indicators, consultations with national and provincial governments, consultations with local stakeholders, and data collections to track cities' progress. Next slide, please. UMF is used as a tool for data collection. Thus, the data is collected in 5 domains: society, economy, environment, culture, and governance. Our priority SDGs are 3, 4, 8, 11, 13, and 16. Thus, we analyze data on education, health, transportation, open spaces, waste, wastewater, safety, and e-governance tools. The data allow us to understand the needs for services and action we need to take. Next slide, please. VLR helps to align local plans to national and provincial plans and ensure stable support from the national government. Data from VLR also supports evidence-based planning. It allows the city to provide the right services to citizens. And VLR gives a good summary of a city to national government on progress and needs. Thank you. That's all from Udon Thani.
Thank you very much, Ms. Siriwarang, for this very concise presentation, sharing the experiences from Udon Thani City Municipality. I have two questions that I want to ask you. You have mentioned the alignment of these actions into the national and provincial plans, and the fact that the VLRs are supporting evidence-based planning. What is your current experience with the collection of data in education, in health, transportation, the open spaces, waste and wastewater? Because most of our countries experience problems with data collection and analysis, and sometimes it is very difficult to analyze and share data. So what is your experience with gathering data on these basic services?
Actually, from provincial that we have the data from our municipality, we have very shortage information or data to collect it. We have to make a request to ask for the data from the provincial level to compare and to analyze for these problems that we have in our city.
Thank you very much. Another question is, what improvements can you make to ensure that the VLR is more effective in your municipality?
To ensure that the impact VLR in our service, you mean, right?
Yes. Yes.
To link VLR to cities' actions and projects, and continue data collection over time to monitor the progress.
No, thank you very much. Yeah, no, I think that's a good answer, and thank you very much for your intervention. Now from Thailand, we now go to the third speaker, Ms. Tatiana Pisi Reynoso. Ms. Reynoso is from the municipality of Santa Fe. She's the executive coordinator for the International Cooperation Agency of the municipality of Santa Fe in Argentina. We want to hear from her the experience of the municipality of Santa Fe on the connection between their VLR with the provision of urban basic services. Ms. Tatiana, you have 5 minutes.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm feeling the pressure with the minutes because everyone was so good with it. So I will try to speak as fast as possible. Thank you to the UN Habitat colleagues for this space of dialogue and sharing experiences. So In Santa Fe, we're talking about an intermediate city of 500,000 people in the center region of Argentina. It's surrounded in 3/4 by water, specifically a lagoon and 3 rivers that feed multiple types of ecosystems like wetlands, islands, and the city itself. So critical services like garbage management, water management, or reducing disaster risks are fundamental for the city, for Santa Fe. So next, Gaia, please. Yes, so SDGs are an excellent opportunity to be a vehicle to implement policies and programs to deal with these critical issues. And there are multiple goals associated with health, education, employment, infrastructure, production, which are also key for local administrations. And what we should ask ourselves is, why is it important to think about SDGs locally? So what is the motivation for this kind of exercise, like the VLR? So this has a very simple explanation. The problems are resolved in the territory, and the needs are always contextualized, need context. Therefore, the fulfillment of many of the goals require local action. Cities and communities are the places where impacts are experienced more directly and where concrete policies and programs can be implemented to address the specific problems of each locality, right? So furthermore, by thinking locally, you can better leverage existing resources and capabilities, involve civil society and the private sector, and adapt solutions to the needs, to the local needs and realities. So next, please. Yes, so as part of the answer to this question, I thought it would be relevant to show this graph. This graph was presented at the Sustainable Development Forum for Latin America and the Caribbean, showing the progress and the setbacks for each SDGs. And well, I don't know if you get to read this, but in red, those that are in decline, in green, the ones that are progressing, and in yellow, the ones that are in the correct track, but not enough. So beyond the initial analysis, let us look specifically at SDG 11. The SDG for cities has 2 particularities. It does not present measurable setbacks of the goals of which there is data, and at the same time, it does not present data on too many goals. So this is something that we were talking about, and my colleagues already talked about the lack of data to ensure the monitoring and the evaluation of certain goals. So this means that local action is not being measured correctly and is not being fully evaluated. So there is a necessity, right, to obtain more and better data, but also to measure this at a local level. Next, please. So in this context, Santa Fe already presented the first VLR in 2022. Because of the lack of data, we only got to monitor SDG 4 and SDG 11 because we had provincial data, like the case in Thailand, that could help us in this. So the main goal for our next VLR that is going to be presented next year to 2025 is to improve and to increase the production, the construction of indicators for this matter. Next, Gaia, please. So I'm not going to stop in this because it's not relevant. It's just the 10 cities in Santa Fe that have the VLRs. So in this context, this was a little bit of context, and I think I'm done with my 5 minutes, but just give me 2 more minutes, please. So in this context, the major presented launched in May of this year, the SDG local program, which has 2 components of localization of SDG and appropriation of the 2030 agenda at a metropolitan level, so as to have a stronger background at the moment of drafting our next VLR. Next, Gaia, please. So the program, as I said, has 3 dimensions: the awareness dimension, the territorialization dimension. Sorry, my English is a bit rusty. And finally, the VLR. Next, please. So the first dimension is the exercise of diagnosis and prioritizing SDGs. We already did this exercise, and these are the SDGs that were prioritized. And the idea is to continue with our capacity building and our awareness activities and events, so that we can do another diagnosis at the end of the year to see if the same SDGs were prioritized. And then next, Gaia, please. And then we have the territorialization dimension, that is basically getting citizenship and every official local authority involved with different training days, with some courses and trainings that are being held by the Economic Commission for Latin America and the Caribbean in Santa Fe, diverse multi-actor political dialogue tables that are taking place in August, September, and November in this year, and then trying to build this interinstitutional mechanism to strengthen the implementation capacities for the 2030 agenda. So with all these activities this year, the idea is to finally, next Gaia, please, to finally draft the second voluntary local report for Santa Fe in 2025. This allows us to identify actors and define urban challenges, objectives, lines of action, allowing a participatory process for this new VLR. So this is the idea, the general idea. I had some examples to talk about, but I am running out of time, so I'm just going to leave it there. And thank you so much for the time. And there's my email in case anyone wants to know more. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tiana, for that comprehensive presentation. I think you did well also with.
Thank you.
We still have some additional minutes to open up the floor, but before we do that, you have mentioned the need for more and better data to monitor your VLR. How can data be used to attract more resources to the urban basic services that you are monitoring? How can they be used as a resource mobilization tool, the information that you're putting up the VLRs?
Yes, well, first of all, we experienced this year because when we realized that we had to work on these construction of indicators, for example, this was the background so that we could ask for technical assistance with the Economic Commission for Latin America and the Caribbean, and they are doing all the, they are, accompanying the process for our VLR construction, elaboration, drafting. And this has been a very good experience because they have allowed us to also search for example, international financing when it comes to different urban services, especially in our national context right now. So this has been an example, and we are really implementing it this year.
No, thank you very much. I think that's a good answer. We have 5 more minutes to open up the floor. Participants, anyone with a question or in the chat already, if any question has been posted there that requires the attention of the speakers, feel free to just raise your hand and we will give you an opportunity to ask a question. I hope there are no questions in the chat that require a response. Yes, Eileen, over to you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Helen from Tbilisi City Hall. I just wanted to ask with the previous lady from Taiwan in her presentation, she has mentioned that previous time whether they beginning their VLRs and VSRs procedures, they use different kind of levers, for instance, trainings, also like meetings and meeting with consultants and so on and so forth. And which lever I'm just interested in regarding their country and according to their country or city, which lever was the strongest to develop VLRs and VSRs the most? Because maybe we will use the same lever. Thank you.
From Thailand, you mean?
Yeah. From
Okay.
previous
Yep.
lady.
Yeah, that's right.
Thank you.
Yes, can we get the answer from Thailand? Ms. Siriwarang?
Apologies, I believe Phoenicia is attempting to respond on behalf of Udon Thani. Phoenicia, we don't hear you.
I should repeat or?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Yes, my name is Panisa. I would like to answer on behalf of Udon Thani. Can you repeat your question again?
Yes, for sure. In her presentation, she has mentioned that around the VLRs, VSRs, they from the beginning stage, I mean, they use different kind of levers. For instance, consultations, trainings, collecting data, meetings with different kind of consultants, and so on and so forth. And I just would like to know which lever, according to your country or city, which lever was the strongest, because maybe we used it as the ideal example.
Yes, so the technique we use, the first one is we try to strengthen multi-governance, multi-level governance from the start of the process. So in the city selection and when we start the process in Udon Thani, we consult national government and ESDC, which is responsible for SDG monitoring at the national level. So they can support us on data. And also on the second component, we also consult with local stakeholders, such as local universities and different groups like municipal councils, and also use panels. So we try to invite people to give opinions and to have a shared visions together when we develop VLR. And on the third component, I think UMF is the data monitoring tool that help us to prioritize issues in cities easier. And we have the data collection working group that meet every two weeks to follow up on data.
This lever in theoretical procedures and stages is the strongest, right? Collecting data. If correct people will help you, is the strongest lever you think, right? Did I understand correctly?
Yes, because in Thailand, data sometimes it is collected at the national level, sometimes it is collected at a provincial level. So only municipal data alone cannot have the complete picture of the development in the city. So we need to engage different agencies to gather information.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for those questions and answers. We have come to the end of the first block, and I want to thank all the speakers for very insightful contributions. Let me now hand over to Sukaina Al-Nasri from ESQA, who is going to moderate block 2. Over to you, Sukaina.
Thank you, Pire. Thank you so much. Let me start by introducing myself. So my name is Sukaina Al-Nasrawi, but like Pire, you're excused. My last name is hard to pronounce. So I'm Sukaina Al-Nasrawi. I'm the lead of the Sustainable Urban Development portfolio at the UNESCO, which is the United Nations Economic and Social Commission for Western Asia, based in Beirut, Lebanon. So lots of thanks to our moderator, Pire, and the speakers from the first block for their insightful presentations and experiences. We will now move, as Pire said, to our second block, which will also focus on urban services provision, but from a different perspective. So basically, it will focus on the role of local and regional governments as urban services providers. For the second block, we will hear the experiences from the Municipal Association of Nepal, the city of Ramallah in Palestine, and the city of Nakuru. And similar to the first block, each speaker will have 5 and 7 minutes for their presentations and hope a question. Without further let's begin with Kalani Devkota, who's the executive director of the Nepal. 7 minutes, please. What could you tell us about the role of local governments in providing urban basic services?
Thank you. Thank you so much. Can someone display the presentation, please? Good afternoon from Kathmandu. My name is Kalanidhi, Executive Director, Municipal Association of Nepal. So let me briefly present. The next slide, please. Okay, excuse me, I'm afraid this is not the slide. It's not my slide.
Yeah, let's go to the slide.
Apologies, colleagues. We had a small technical hitch with our internet connection. Give us one moment.
Absolutely.
Yeah. First slide, please. I'm in the second slide. Slide number 2.
It seems there is a problem with the...
Apologies, colleagues. We're having a problem with our internet connection. Give us just one moment. Apologies for that.
It's okay. I'm having internet connections too. I mean, these things always happen when it comes to virtual meetings. So I think after COVID, we all became used to that.
Every single time. It's just impossible.
It's okay. It's just some time for break. Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Devkota.
Yeah. Thank you so much. We have a new constitution in place after 2015 that we introduced the federal system of governance in the country, and that delegated number of functions to the municipality that used to be previously delivered by the different line agencies of the central government. And the reason why I'm sharing this is because after this new system of governance in place, the constitutional provision of local governments are in place now. So that has enabled public services quite effective and more accessible to the people. The pie chart that shows you that the 40% of the municipal services are delivered by the local governments, that the municipalities, whereas you can see other institutions have a very smaller share of the cake. So this is how Nepal has introduced a new system of governance, although we have the kind of old data here. But after the 2015 constitution, after the new system of governance, it has the paradigm shift from the very low level of service delivery from the local governments. The people had to rely upon federal governments, different units, and now the people have more accessible services. Next slide, please. Now the challenges that although we have really achieved our goals as per the expectation of the people, however, there are still, we have got the functions. Local governments have abundant, responsibilities and facilities, but at the same time, together with the functions, still the limitation of the funds and the functionaries, I would say, that are the human resources, and the management system is still weak, and after the 3 years of government are in place, and the coordination and cooperation between the federal, provincial and local governments, particularly the provincial and local governments, are still a challenge, because the provincial governments, they are also the subnational governments. They have the new, structure. They didn't have offices. They didn't have proper human resources. And that way, it's very difficult for them to institutionalize so many things. And that has really hindered the kind of cooperation. And because we have also shared responsibilities, concurrent rights of the subnational government, local governments alone can't deliver utility services. There are certain areas they have to collaborate with the provincial government, and because of the unstable kind of governance and political instability, they have faced several challenges in that. And one more thing I would like to also draw your attention, that the figure shows that the local government should have allocated more funding to cater the needs of the people, based on the functions that had delivered. But still, if you see still the public are spending more on the utility services for the basic services, and second, expenses are going still from the federal government, and the local governments are still spending quite low as per the the functions delivered. So the last slide, please. So now again, the mismatch between the fund, function and functionaries. Last slide, please. Now, local and regional governments and local government association, we being the local government association, we have the kind of say, and we have the better negotiation power when we organize. For example, at the international level, we have coordination and cooperation with the UCLG World, CityNet, ICLEI, and several other institutions, and also individual associations like VNG International in the Netherlands, and Federation of Canadian Municipalities, and we have several cross learning, and based on different experiences in the Asia Pacific region and also in the other part of the world, there are some vicious cycle that has not allowed local government to, really spend in the core urban basic services, because there are unaware people, stakeholder, that leads to the low political, private and NGO sector sensitization, that leads to lesser focus on the basic services. That also related to SDGs, no institutional mechanism capacity, and then lesser intervention to come out of the poverty. That this vicious circle is prevalent, whereas how we can, after the VLR, VSR and intervention from the local government associations that facilitates, we can have the virtuous cycle, which is the kind of, the approach that when we have informed and aware citizens, institutions and stakeholders, that includes private sector and other institutions, that creates improved political and private NGO sector sensitization, and then the peer-to-peer learning, advocacy, better collective negotiations, where you can see the arrow that local government associations and the VSR, VLR that we produce, that can, have the, that is instrumental, and that can provide several, positive vibe. And then that leads to the intergovernmental coordination, cooperation that has also ensured kind of better institution, where you have focal unit for our basic urban services, when you have improved institution, prioritization and proper organogram, and this whole cycle will, support the better delivery and improved basic urban services. And that's where the role of the VLR, VSR comes very important. And as the association of the entire cities and towns of Nepal, this is the second time that we are producing VSR. It's in the final stage, thanks to the UCLG work that has supported us, and which has been very useful, not only for the local governments, but also for the federal governments that is in the process of preparing its VLR. Thank you so much. I welcome the questions if there is any.
Thank you, Mr. Gotta, for this enriching experience and sharing it. Now, let me pose a follow-up question stemming right from the last slide you shared, which is this virtuous circle and the role of the VLR-VSR. So, can you tell us a little bit more on how can the voluntary subnational reviews support local and national decision makers in providing urban basic services in like few minutes, in 1 or 2 minutes, please?
Thank you so much. Because we organize regional meetings and interaction events that's dedicated to urban basic services, and also some kind of cooperation and coordination based on which these urban basic services can be ensured. And if we have the data supported, successful practices and evidence-based, some kind of case studies that we can share with the municipality and local governments. And when they do the planning process, they are informed that, okay, we have to allocate certain funding for the education, whichever area is weaker, they tend to allocate funding. Similarly, at the center or federal level, the federal governments have, in our country, we have 4 types of grant system that we call equalization grant, conditional grant, and 2 other grant system. And then that particularly the equalization grant, the local governments are free to decide that which area they can prioritize. They want to prioritize. So depending upon their needs, they get the funding. So that's how we are from the MUAN, our association, that we are advocating for the, for the needy municipalities. They have to increase the funding, because there are quite a lot of disparity, and they don't have equal, financial, condition. So the VSR will be really instrumental, and it's very useful tool that can, better advocate with the, proof and data. That's why it's very useful.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Mr. Devgota. And of course, this advocacy aspect of the VLR and the VSR is key. So, and we always promote this aspect of it. So data collection in addition to advocacy. Thank you so much for your contribution. And now we move from a national association. We will hear how now the experience of the city of Ramallah, Palestine, in providing urban basic services. Municipalities and local governments are responsible to deliver several basic services, and they encounter numerous challenges in doing so. Now, dear Irene, as head of the Sustainable Development Department, could you please share what are the main obstacles that Ramallah is facing, and which solutions are you implementing currently? Please do so between 5 and 7 minutes.
Thank you, Sukaina. Thank you, everybody, for this opportunity and for the insightful ideas from the other cities. Can you please move to the second slide, please? Okay, in Ramallah, we have a unique situation, as you know. We are under occupation, so to provide services, basic services, and to make development in the city is it is not that easy, but it's doable with our case. So Ramallah city is located in the center of Palestine. It's a small city, but it's also a center city for the administrative and international organizations, for the temporary also location for the government. So there's a lot of responsibilities on the city to provide services and to keep developing and keep up with all the demand and requirements, despite all the challenges. So the VLR, we are thankful for the UN Habitat and ISPA for giving us the chance to produce our first VLR as the first city in Palestine and the third in the Arab region. We aligned our priorities with the national and government and local strategies. Also, we did the consultations with all the stakeholders, including all the relevant stakeholders that we work on to provide the basic services. So I will go now about the challenges. If we second slide, please. The geopolitical context is the main challenge that we face in Ramallah, as any city in Palestine. Maybe some of you know that after Oslo Accord in 1993, Palestine the land was classified into 3 areas: Area A, B, C, and Area A is fully administered by the Palestinian Authority, but still there were restrictions on the movement, like checkpoints, separation wall, settlements, and limited access to resources like the use of land, water, electricity. And the political instability also keep holding us sometimes from developing the basic services. For example, the solid waste treatment. As you will see in the second slide, we managed to collect the solid waste 100% in the city, but we have a problem in treating the solid waste and moving it to the landfill because it's in another city. So it's which we can't control every day to move our solid waste to this landfill. So we are now looking for a more solid and permanent solution for this problem. And the urban development challenges also, as I mentioned before, as the hub for economic and job creation in Palestine, and also the diversity of people living in the city. We try to develop our plans and from housing, urban planning, expansion of the city, opening new neighborhoods and connecting roads, but we face the obstacles of bringing raw materials or even the permission to open these roads. The next slide, please. So in the VLR, I chose the most relevant SDG 11 to our topic today. I chose also the key indicators that can show you that we have acceptable indicators, but sometimes we face the problem that we didn't have the data about for the city itself. So we took the national percentage or ratio. We managed as a city to solve some problems like the traffic management and city safety initiatives. As I said before, collecting the solid waste and the wastewater, it's 100% indicator. That we also now try to maximize the use of the reused treated water, like in plants irrigation and roads construction, because we have a scarcity in the water, because we can't control the amount of water that reach the city and the households every day. In this map, you can see that we are a small city. This is the boundaries of our city in the black, and the red lines are the sewage network that we are almost finishing 100% in this year, that all households will be connected to the sewage network. And the yellow spots are the open spaces and parks that we try to have activities and a place for our inhabitants to go and for free and enjoy their time. And we use the reused treated water in these parks to have the greening in them. So these are working around solutions to solve our problems with the water scarcity and providing the basic services. Next slide, please. So the opportunities we found after we have finished the VLR, we focused the priorities on SDG 4, 8, 11, 13, 16, 17, which will help us in developing the city from healthcare, education, public transport, waste management. By as I said before, we need we are now finding solution with some partners and international institutions to find the solutions like sorting plants or helping us to have the permissions to have an landfill inside the city to solve the problem of treating the solid waste. Also, we will try to increase the solar PV systems in the city. We have managed to have funds to develop our first one soon. We tried to have creative solutions, and we matched our VLR to be aligned with our 4 domains that we are focusing in our strategy, which are infrastructure and environment, economic development, social development, and governance. So the VLR was the tool that we measured where we are now and how can we manage to develop our basic urban services in the city. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Irene, for sharing this experience. And let me follow up with the VLR exercise that you're doing. So Ramallah is finalizing, as you said, its first voluntary local review. And I honestly take this opportunity to congratulate you for undertaking this very first VLR in Palestine, provided the geopolitical context and the repercussions of the war on Gaza. So UNESCO and UN Habitat have the honor to collaborate with you on this. But we are interested, all of us, to know, in your opinion, how can VLRs help cities in improving urban basic service delivery, particularly cities as in the context of Ramallah? And please, like in 1 or 2 minutes max.
Yeah, sure. From our experience, when the city is always busy at implementing the services and following up, we couldn't know where are we from the status of reaching the optimal, let's say, or the needed requirements in the city. So the VLR helped us to know where are we now and in which stage, because also we 7 years ago we launched our resilient strategy 2050, but we couldn't manage to measure where are we now from implementing the resilient strategy. So the VLR also helped us to see the current status and to help us in the future planning. And in creating awareness with our related stakeholders, like the Ministry of Local Government, even the government itself. And it helped us also when reaching out to international donors, because they ask us, where are you now? And we have completed the VLR with the climate action plan that we also have finished last year. So it's all aligned now, and it will be more like giving us a broader aspect where to head in our future plans.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Irene. This issue of assessing the needs through the VLR is key. And thank you for noting the alignment issue.
Yeah.
We always advocate for this alignment at the local level between the different plans that exist, and also for the alignment between the local and national level. Thank you so much for sharing the experience of Ramallah and Palestine. And now we have with us Mr. George Wasonga, who is the expert working on the VLR of Nakuru in Kenya. We are following this VLR process, Mr. Wasonga, and we are really excited to read the report. Now, based on your experience, how can VLRs support local and regional governments improving the provision of urban basic services? Please share with us your insights in 5 and 7 minutes. Over to you, Mr.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, moderator, and thank you for having me in this call. I hope I'm audible enough.
You are.
Thank you. I want to make this presentation in 3 forms. One is really to bring up the perspective of the changing urban landscape in Kenya, which was, of course, a question by the constitution that we promulgated in 2010. Number 2 is the governance and management responsibilities that then is now bestowed in these new urban forms. And thirdly is the instruments that then help them to deliver this. So if we could go to the next slide. So in terms of the changing urban landscape and in respect to how we then address inclusive and equitable basic service provisions, there are 3 elements in the sphere that I call the mandate sphere. And these elements are their functions that are being assigned to these urban areas. And Nakuru being one of our youngest cities, Nakuru was actually just chartered as a city in December 2021. Before that, it had municipal status. So it's getting more functions, it's being assigned more responsibilities. And of course, the argument usually is, does this new functional dispensation go alongside with a commensurate budgetary resource to achieve those functions? So that's one element that I will come to back in a short while. The other aspect that has been provided as the mandate to the city is basically the powers vested on the city board to therefore perform certain policy and legislative functions, such as creating city bylaws and so on, that create the conducive environment, therefore, for certain aspects of basic service provision and in its inclusive nature to take place. A third element that is provided in the mandate within this new urban architecture is the duty towards leadership. And this leadership duty is really bestowing responsibility on the citizens to be an institution that then works alongside with the city governance and management system to assure and to ensure that certain elements of the basic service provisions are honored. So that particular sphere, as far as Nakuru, the city in which we are interested in and I'm focusing on here is concerned, are at very different levels of engagement. Certain functions have been transferred, others are yet to be transferred. So there's a transitional moment that we're experiencing. In terms of the leadership and duty, I think people are getting to start to be accustomed to the fact that in our local government regime, we do not have elected leaders so far, but we have appointed leadership in those particular cities and municipalities. So that dimension is one interesting area, and I'll come back to it in terms of how the VLR that we are doing in Nakuru has tried to shape this. The second sphere is really the operating environment, because the city in itself is not like it's coming in and starting to exist. People have existed in the city, and therefore there's a whole host of knowledge, and we came across quite a number of knowledge elements as we're going through the VLR process. And this knowledge, unfortunately, is resident certainly in silos. So if you go to the water sector, there's quite a bit of knowledge resident there, but part of it is not really within the precincts of the city board that is governing the city. So that knowledge horizon in itself may be rich, but because it has a bit of jurisdictional elements, it stays in pockets that you have to really search to find it. And very often you don't find that information quickly with the city board that's managing the city itself. But secondly, there's lots of bodies that are presenting innovative approaches to basic service provision, from civil society organizations, private sector entities. But the interesting thing about this innovation is that it really remains on the peripheral level. It's not seen as a captive innovation that should therefore drive basic service delivery. On the third sphere, therefore, when you look at that all element of accountability, which has to be based really on the confidence and trust, because we have a transitional system where we are now having new city boards, we're having new management regimes, and the functions and powers are starting to take shape. There is a sway in which people want to either trust and have confidence in their city management, and therefore you find in opportunities where we're talking about data, which is a centerpiece of VLR. Lots of times people aren't very free in the sectors that are not already within the confines of a city government to provide this kind of data. And that shows you that there has to be a lot that then works around that accountability regime to grow and drive the confidence and trust so that data can be easily exchanged and easily accessible in the different forms. So next slide, please. So what did we do in Nakuru, therefore? We found, of course, in the sense of Nakuru, that there were certain incoherences within the legislative and policy regimes. And this was expected because we are in that space of transition. And then, of course, the plans which are dictated upon by the law that they need to have, integrated development plans and other sets of plans, did not have very specific coherence with the implementation because a lot of the plans haven't yet landed the type of resource that would then help to implement these plans. And of course, as I said, the governance and trust issues are still pretty much on board because people are starting to understand this new regime of things. So what we have done with the VLR in Nakuru is to position the VLR as an interface and a tracker between the short-term integrated city development plan and the longer-term Vision 2050 that Nakuru is putting in place. And in that context, through the analysis of the integrated development plan, the VLR itself has then identified 6 specific priority or dominant SDGs against which we are expressing the features of how that plan in itself can be tracked in terms of its implementation but also importantly, how it can then be used to take account and to create an environment of building confidence and trust. So what did we uniquely do with this particular VLR process is we then decided to create it as a dashboard, a digital dashboard. So all the information that ordinarily would be packed in a 300-page integrated development plan is put in an easily accessible dashboard, which with a public interface, one can quickly go in and find, so what were the priority planned areas that are in the short-term or the medium-term integrated development plan? Then how do we measure this in the context of the indicators that are provided for within the SDGs? And that measurement therefore contributes ultimately to how we are making progress towards the longer-term vision 2050 of Nakuru. So this particular dashboard has created a dynamism in which we don't just look at an isolated VLR, but we look at a VLR as an integral system between short-term plans of the city and the longer-term vision of the city. And then we use the indicators within that particular, the SDGs to become a standard form of measure, so that if we're looking at a sector like health or education, we're able to then measure how is Nakuru then performing vis-a-vis the expectations of the commitments that have been placed in the SDG. What that has helped also is that it's very easy, therefore, to leverage on that particular VLR and link it up with the voluntary national review process. So this is the context of Nakuru. We're at the last stages of finalizing the Nakuru VLR, but the dashboard itself is already available. It can be accessed, and one can navigate it very easily from looking at what is it that the city is looking at in terms of its 5-year integrated development plan. How does this then relate with the SDG? And that is measured through the VLR dashboard, that then links it also with the expectations of the longer term vision 2050. Last slide, please. So in terms of looking forward and going the collaborative path with national government, private sector, civil society, and so on in urban service delivery, we see 5 particular nodes. One is because the confidence and trust is a real issue because of the transitional element of these cities and the urban areas in Kenya. We think investing more aggressively in digitizing services and extremely allowing access to this information, and also access to various data sets that can upload into that particular digitized form, will be part of how we quickly build the different silos or break the silos so that data can be easily shared, and communities, citizens of those cities are able to then happily bring in the aspects of innovation and also share their reservations with the city as we continue looking at the local actions and how this translates to much more citywide influence. The second aspect that we're looking at in terms of the VLR is we need to make this as a practical utility tool so that it continues to do routine tracking and performance of these local plans. When you have a city integrated development plan and you isolate it from the VLR process, then you have a city that then is bordering on trying to tell citizens something about the integrated plan as well, isolating themselves when it comes to reviewing or discussing the VLR. But we see that as an integral process that should then provide the continuum of how the local plan, development plan is performing vis-a-vis the standard expectations of the SDGs. But more importantly, as you look at the longer term vision that the city has put in place. Thirdly, of course, important that we have the national and local confluence, and this would be basically through linking the
cascaded.
Mr.
Hello,
Wasunga?
can you hear me? I think something about my microphone.
Yes, you got
Skyler, can you hear me?
disconnected a bit. Yes, I can. You got disconnected a bit. But if we can please end the intervention in a minute.
I have to. Yes, I'm about finishing. It's my last slide. I think I just lost my audio system, but you can. Thank you.
Yes, we can hear you. We can hear you. Please go ahead.
Thank you so much. So it's about then looking at the how we can then have national government, private sector, civil society, all working to bring the knowledge that creates coherence in how these new cities or the new city management is able to make legislative and policy environment conducive to recognize knowledge, but as well to build the policy environment that is responsive. But importantly, I think there has to be a space in which we still deploy VLR as a central tool to drive adaptability of innovation, but also to open up this knowledge space so that we don't have to spend every other time you spend a lot of money in doing research to collect data when this data actually exists in a certain form. It's just that the persons holding it may not be coming forth with that particular data. So we need to unlock that space, which I think is very important. Otherwise, thank you, and back to you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Wasunga, for sharing this experience of Kenya. And it's really very interesting to see the three elements as spheres for the inclusive and equitable basic service provision for all. Now, we are running short of time, but I do have a follow-up question very quickly. If you can tell us, because you mentioned this idea of the dashboard, for the data being collected through the VLR. So just in one or two sentences, if you can tell us, how do you plan to sustain and maintain this dashboard? Over to you, George.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Skyne. I think the maintaining and sustaining the dashboard is key in three ways. One of the things we've done is, of course, we have taken the skill, we've cascaded the skill into the city with the existing staff and personnel that are there. So they have been part of the build-up of this dashboard and actually have been trained pretty much on how to make entries of data into the dashboard. So that's a transfer of skills that we have done as we speak now. Number two is we're trying to expand the dashboard to have more usability interface. And that means it should have a reporting interface where when people recognize something about some basic service, couple of street lights not working, sudden potholes in some space, water shortage in a certain area, they're able to report on the dashboard. And therefore that keeps the dashboard pretty active in terms of a reporting and feedback mechanism. And it will then make it very valuable to the city that they need to retain it. Thirdly, which we think is also important, is that we're using it to elevate Nakuru's reporting, not just to their local self, but in a competitive age where they're able to measure their performance against other cities. Because city competitiveness really, as a young city, you have to look at what else other cities are performing. And the only way is to have a standard basis in which you measure that performance. Thank you.
Absolutely. Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you so much, Mr. Wasunga, and definitely competitiveness is the way to go. Thank you so much for sharing this. I think we have 2 minutes if there are any questions from the floor. Any questions addressed to the panelists in this block? Because if not, I'll be directly moving to the closing remarks since we just have 5 minutes. So you still have one more chance to ask a question. Any question? Are there any questions on the chat? Okay, so there are no questions. Counting down from 3 to 1. 3, 2, 1. Then I'm moving to the closing remarks. Thank you so much, dear panelists, for sharing your expertise and your knowledge throughout the 2 blocks. I'm really delighted to bring this insightful session, I would call, to a close. I would like to take a moment to reflect on the critical discussions we've had today regarding urban basic service delivery by local and regional governments, and the role of the voluntary local reviews and the voluntary subnational reviews in that regard. Of course, I mean, we've all noticed through the discussion that the importance of effective and equitable urban basic services cannot be overstated. It really cannot, especially in the face of increasing urbanization and the myriad challenges it brings. So these challenges, as highlighted in the opening by Pire, are daunting. Yet, through today's discussions, it's very evident that there is a collective will by local and regional governments to tackle these issues head-on. So voluntary local reviews and voluntary subnational reviews have emerged as powerful tools. And in the last intervention, this exact expression was used, a powerful utility tool. So they not only help identify and prioritize the needs of urban communities, but also align these needs with the SDGs. Our session underscored how these reviews, I would say, are instrumental in delivering effective urban basic services, tailoring solutions to specific local contexts, and thereby safeguarding and enhancing community well-being. Of course, during our session today, in its two different blocks, we focused on different issues. We focused on the fact that understanding the specific challenges faced in the local context, governments can provide adequate solutions and safeguard their communities. We've touched on the importance of building resilience and particularly building economic resilience, and how undertaking voluntary local reviews and voluntary subnational reviews need to align with comparable plans for a better impact. We also discussed how different entities need to be engaged in data collection, and that it's not only municipal data, but different parties need to be engaged in the data collection process, and how this data collection process helps cities in assessing the local needs, and it helps them in informing and aligning with local plans, and ultimately aligning with the national plans. So we highlighted this advocacy for the local policy coherence and for the local national policy coherence, thus the multi-level governance and its importance. So in closing, I would like to thank all our speakers for their valuable contributions and insights, and to all participants for their engagement and commitment. The knowledge shared today equips us all to better address the challenges and seize the opportunities in improving urban basic service delivery in local contexts. Let us continue to work together. Let us continue to share knowledge and to support each other in our journey towards accelerating the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals for surely a sustainable, inclusive, and resilient urban development for all. We really hope to see you in the next and the final session of the series, of the VLR-VSR series, starting in 31 minutes on linking evidence-based solution and financing for SDGs localization. I thank you from the bottom of my heart, and I was really honored to be part of this discussion.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I guess we close now.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I hope everyone is reconnected after the break. I would like to introduce now Ricardo Messiano. He's the SDG coordinator in the Office of the Executive Secretary of ESCAP. Ricardo, can you hear me? Are you there? Sorry, we have too many participants now. Let me see. Let me just wait for another minute. All right, it looks like Ricardo didn't make it. It's not connected. In that case, is Frida connected? You have the first speaker. Let me introduce the session. We are now working on session 4 on looking at examples. How do the VLRs connect? How VLR-VSR can connect to policy making? And we have brought 4 practitioners in the first set, where we're looking at evidence planning as subsequent to the VLRs. If you look at action-based VLRs, what is the next step? How can we see what is happening in terms of evidence planning? And we have 4 panelists today. Frida Johnson from TIERP Sweden. She is the sustainable strategist, and they have the first cross-border VSR between Sweden or the Nordic countries. We have afterwards Julio Sagur, the Secretary of Public Management and Planning of the province of Tucumán. We have Pascal Birnagaba, sorry if I've pronounced it correctly, from the Program Monitoring and Evaluation of the SDG Secretariat Office of the Prime Minister of Uganda. Welcome. And Stefano Mata in the last part of the first session from OECD Paris on the smart and sustainable cities. But let me hand over first to Frida Johnson. Ms. Johnson, are you connected? Can I hand you the floor?
Yes, I'm connected. We'll see if the camera works. Yes.
Yes, it works.
And the microphone. So thank you, Jürgen, and thank you, participants and delegates. So I'm happy to be here, and I'm happy to be able to present our work with our voluntary local review. And I will also say a few words about the Nordic voluntary sub-national review, since Anne couldn't be here today, unfortunately. So I work as a sustainability strategist in TIERP municipality. And since the SDGs are in the core of our governance model, really, I work with budgeting, follow-up, annual reports, operational planning, and auditing. So really everything that has to do with the municipalities' governments. And TIERP municipality is located in central Sweden. We are around 100 kilometers north of the capital, Stockholm. So it's a small rural municipality. So it contains basically mostly of countryside. So this year we produced our first voluntary local review, and it contains of 3 parts. The first describe our governance model, which is totally based on the SDGs. And the second part, which is the main part, contains of several good examples from our different operations and units to show how the work look like in concrete terms. And the last part contains of statistics and analysis to monitor the development locally, but also our contribution globally. So the first part, TIEP has a really special governance model since 2019, where the SDGs are the only governing goals, really. We have put them directly into our budget, and all the operations work towards them. So our politicians, they decided on their own local sub-goals that show what we need to prioritize locally in each goal. So for example, in SDG 2, Zero Hunger, we have 2 local targets in TIEP, that we should strengthen the degree of self-sufficiency, we should preserve agricultural land, and a goal that says that we should reduce malnutrition in the elderly, which is a challenge in our nursing homes. So in this way, we have made every SDG very local and very concrete and relevant to our various operations, but also to our citizens. And we are continuously following the work in our interim and annual reports, and there we monitor the development of the goals with both nationally comparable statistics on the outcome, so for example, climate emissions in total, but also the operations' own indicators, so their own efforts reducing climate emissions, or such as the amount of electric cars and so on. So both are equally important to follow. And we also receive an annual independent review of our audit that examines the annual report and our work with SDG every year. And the second part of the VLR, which is the main part, it's full of good examples from our units, and I should just name a few of them. And we have been working with citizen dialogues for many years, especially with our physical planning unit, and in the recent work with the municipal vision, over 10% of the population actually participated, which is a lot, which was cool. And the schools are working progressively also with sustainability, and today all our preschools are sustainability certified, and the children learn about all the different SDGs. And last year, our care administration unit, they started up a really cool project where they met all the 18-year-olds in the municipality for a health talk. And this was also very important to identify older people who were needing support in different ways, but also to prepare the organization for the fact that the elderly people will increase sharply in the future. And we have also been working a lot with nature conservation and nature-based solution in close collaboration with our local associations. And this has also been a success factor, has been to work closely with our residents. So they are very keen on their local green areas for fishing, hunting, swimming, and recreation, for example. So working with sustainability locally is often easier, I would say, but people want to preserve, they want to develop their local area when it comes to both nature and schools and local business. And the third and last part of our VLR, it consists of a large amount of statistics and analysis from all our managers, and it comes directly from our latest annual report, where the managers have evaluated their own work, basically. And we are well on our way, but we still have major challenges in many of the SDGs. We see climate, for example, where the emissions are decreasing, but not fast enough in accordance with our climate budget. And we also have many challenges in several of the social goals, the unemployment, poor school results, and for example. So the to increase involvement and participation has been, I would say, the most important reason for us producing an VLR, where we have been involving citizens, association, companies, and employees, and also managers in producing this VLR. The communication is another reason, where VLR has been a way of describing this governance model in a simple way, and to be able to spread our model, and that we want to achieve that more people could work with this. So this is very important because we need more people on the train to be successful. So this evidence-based planning that we should talk about today is something that we really do continuously each year in our steering model. For us, it's really about the local development, trying to use best practices together with managers. We re-evaluate the statistics each year, trying to find the best indicators there is. And we also cooperate with academy and scientists to testing new ways of working locally. And so this was, I will stop talking about TIEP now, but please take a look at our VLR if you want more details, so you can contact me directly. I can put maybe a link in the chat, because we really want more municipalities to cooperate with and to spread our model. But I would also like to say a few words about this Nordic voluntary sub-national review. Anne Romsas, she was supposed to be here today, but unfortunately she had to cancel in the last minute. So the last week, the Nordic countries, they presented their Nordic Voluntary Sub-National Review, VSR. And it's the first cross-nation report of this kind in the world, and it has been developed by the Nordic Association of Local and Regional Governments, together with Nordregio. And the aim of this report was to highlight how the Nordic municipalities have localized SDGs, so which progress have been made, as well as the obstacles they have met in their work. And through the report, we want to share the learnings and tested methods with local regional authorities globally. And TIERP is also a part of this report. And some of the major findings from the report was that actually a majority of responding municipalities report active work to localize the SDG. So there were over 95% of the municipalities in Sweden and Norway, 80% in Denmark, and 64% in both Finland and Iceland. And most municipalities also integrate the SDG agenda in the local strategies, planning, systems, budgets, and procurement guidelines, which was very cool. And one of the unique features of the Nordic VSR is also it has an inclusive approach, so it's including sub-chapters by the Nordic youth and also the Nordic civil society to ensure that voices of the youth and civil society are also integrated to the narrative. It also contains a Nordic toolbox, which is an interactive map with good example from the municipalities and regions in the Nordic countries, including TIERP. We also have several examples there. And it's very compelling to see and where you can copy good examples from different communities. And I heard the report have been quoted on several seminars, debates during this high political forum. So it's clear to me that it's evident that the development really happens locally. So I encourage you all to take a look at this Nordic sub-national review. And I can also send the links in the chat. So it's really interesting reading there. So thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Peter. That was exciting news. I mean, if I look at, we had a quick look at the VSR, and I think it shows the nature that we need to encourage working together among local governments, bringing the momentum, share lessons learned, and see how we can bring this movement forward, as well as the integration of SDGs into planning processes, municipal planning processes beyond just doing a VLR. It's just well beyond conducting a VLR. There are many communities, many municipalities who are integrating the SDGs into their planning processes. Even they may not do a VLR, but they still incorporate the Sustainable Development Goals into their planning processes. And from the VLR itself of TIERP, I also think this is a very good example to structure it into bringing the statistics maybe as a third part, but focusing really on the practical examples, what can be done, and bringing the SDGs into the schools, into the nursing homes, and engaging with all the citizens. And I think, yeah, 10% engagement of the citizens is pretty a good example, I think. So congratulations from our side, and thank you so much for your presentation. Let me move over now to the experience in Argentina. We have as next speaker Julio Sagur, who is from the government of the province Tucumán. Julio, the floor is yours. If he's there. Okay. Sorry for the mishap. I don't see Julio. All right, he seems not to be there. Has Ricardo joined in the meantime? Sorry if somebody can. All right, we seem to have some connection problem of the participants. I apologize for the issue there. It may be some confusion on the time difference. When we give this Central European time, they may have thought it's a different timing. And I don't see Ricardo either. So while we figuring that out, is Pascal around? All right. while we are trying to follow up with the participants, maybe I first ask Stefano to start with his presentation, and then we are trying to follow up and get Julio and Ricardo connected. Stefano, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Hello,
all right.
Hello, Jürgen.
Hello, good seeing you again. May I introduce Stefano Marta from OECD, who is the head of the Smart and Sustainable Cities. Stefano, the floor is yours. And we will, in the meantime, try to follow up on the other speakers. Thank you.
Thank you, Jürgen. I have a few slides. I will try to share my screen. If it's if they can allow me to share the screen. My presentation will follow on the OECD approach to evidence-based policy making, and in particular on the OECD localized indicator framework that we prepare to support our member countries, our cities, and our regions in implementing the Sustainable Development Goals. I see that it's still not possible for me to share the slide, so I don't know if I can do it or if someone can share the slide for me. Anyway,
I can share the slide. Give me a second.
Thank you.
At least I try. Here. Can you see the slides?
Not yet.
All right, hang on. Screen see.
Okay, now yes.
I just have to start on slideshow, I guess. All right.
Okay. Thank you, Jürgen. You can move to slide 2, indeed. Okay. So, as you can see from the second slide, we have developed this OECD localized indicator framework that we launched in 2022. And it contains about 135 indicators to measure progress on SDGs for 600 regions and 600 cities in the OECD countries. The good news is that we have a coverage for all the 17 goals, both for regions and for the functional urban areas. Of course, there are different degrees of coverage depending on the goals. And you can see on the right, top right of the slide, the coverage for each SDGs. And to help cities and regions and member countries to see how they are progressing towards the goals, we also develop a web tool that allows cities and regions to see how they are progressing compared to their national average, compared to the SDG, compared to the OECD average, and compared to their peers. This was very useful for us because it helped us to identify, first of all, which are the gaps, which are the sectoral gaps, the SDGs where cities and regions are lagging behind, and also which are the SDGs where they are progressing faster than the others. And what you can see, for example, is that 80% of the regions in OECD countries have not achieved any of the end values for the 17 goals, while 70% of the cities overall in OECD countries are also not on track with the 17 SDGs. Another important point is that this allows us to identify which are the thematic gaps, as I said, and we can see that the regions are particularly lagging behind in terms of climate, energy, coastal protection, biodiversity, industry, innovation, while cities are lagging behind in terms of climate, biodiversity, and health. And the gender-related targets are gaps for both cities and regions. You can move to the next slide, please.
Did it work?
Not yet.
Okay, hang on.
Okay, perfect. So in terms of data, we collected this data mainly through the OECD National Statistical Institute. So each member country every year is providing us mainly the socioeconomic data. but to improve the data coverage and also to try to go beyond OECD countries with our analysis, we are using some geospatial sources to bridge this some data gaps. And for example, some of the sources that we are using for this geospatial data are the Global Burden of Disease database for to measure the exposure to air pollution in cities in the OECD and also in non-OECD countries. With this geospatial data, we can do that. The second source is the Global Human Settlement Layer that help us to measure the built-up area growth relative to the population growth and the built-up area per capita. Another example is the moderate resolution imaging spectrodiometer that help us to measure the urbanized land effect in cities from all cities in the world and not just the OECD one. How we have been using this, both in terms of OECD and the cities and regions that have been working with us. We can move to the next slide, please. And we use this both for our global analysis, as we did in the synthesis report that we launched on in 2020, and that help us to identify again which were the main trends globally on SDG achievement for cities and regions. And we use for our annual series, like the Cities and Regions at a Glance publication that we do every year to see which are the main, how cities, regions, and the national government are progressing in OECD countries on various indicators. So this is how the OECD is using this database, how cities and regions are using this database. We have been working with 12 cities and regions until now, from mainly OECD countries, but also provinces like Córdoba in Argentina or Paraná in Brazil. And this, we have been using this data to identify which are the main strengths of these cities and regions in the progress towards the SDGs, which are the main gaps and which should be the priorities for investment. So we published the 12 reports for these cities and regions, and this database was the key source that we use for identify the progress on the 17 of the 17 goals. And finally, my last slide is an example on how we are now moving towards a global coverage of this indicator framework beyond the OECD countries. This is just one example on how air pollution has been progressing in all areas of the world and not just in OECD countries. And we can see, and that's the good news, that in the last 20 years, air pollution has decreased in 85% of cities in the world, particularly in North America and South Asia. In terms of next step, what we are going to do is we are updating the data, the indicators of the framework that we launched in 2020, and the new framework will be ready for the Summit for the Future and for the World Urban Forum, where we are going to present the new version of the toolkit and the web tool. We are also going to include, this will be for the coming years, time series data, because what we have now is the picture of the reality at a specific point in time. What we want to do is also to measure some progress on how things have been moving, like in the last 10 years since the adoption of the SDGs, and also how things how cities and regions will progress if they continue with the same speed, and when they will achieve the SDGs if they continue with the same speed. Then finally, as I mentioned, we would like to cover to expand this global indicator framework beyond OECD countries, and this is something we'll be happy to do in cooperation with the UN. So we stop here. Thanks for the opportunity, Jürgen, and looking forward to the discussion.
Thank you very much, Stefano. I think very interesting. Just a quick follow-up question, also to be clear. When it comes to these data tools, what you have experienced, and you would be able to share some of these data beyond OECD countries?
Yes, all the geospatial data goes beyond the OECD countries. What we have for the OECD countries are mainly the socioeconomic indicators. Now, using the new definition of urbanization that has been developed by OECD, World Bank, UN Habitat, and FAO, and was adopted by the UN Statistical Commission. And using the geospatial data, we are able to measure this indicator, like on PM 2.5 emission or the the progress in terms of some climate indicators beyond OECD countries. So it's something that we have it and we can share with you.
Thank you very much, Stefano. I think that's a very valid point. What we have experienced when we're working with local governments, one main obstacle is getting the right data to see where we stand in terms of SDG localization, SDG achievements. The first step is always to figure out where do we actually currently stand, what is our next steps, what can we do. But in order to see progress, how we advance, where's our starting point, getting data seems to be one of the major challenges. It should not be the only challenge. We should not get ourselves carried away just looking at the statistics, what is available, but looking at what is a priority, what is the data available, and seek international sources of data beyond what is available locally. We hope that we can connect experts from OECD, from the UN, from the wider networks and partners to assist local governments to narrow the data gap. Thank you very much, Stefano. Let me now, Ricardo has been connected. So we changed the sequence slightly. So now let me introduce again Ricardo Messiano from the Office of the Executive Secretary in ESCAP. Ricardo, the floor is yours.
Thank you.
Sorry,
hello?
You have to get closer. Yeah.
Hello?
Can you get closer to the micro? It's getting better.
Can I get any closer than this? Hello?
Okay, now it's better.
Sorry about that. Apologies. I, as often happen, I double book myself. So I'm now in another regional session at the HLPF. So sorry about that. Without any further ado, it's great to be here and representing ESCAP in this VLR-VSR Days. Such a great initiative, and as ESCAP, we're really proud of having contributing and being part of the discussion with DESA and other partners on the VLRs. The issue here is quite clear. Local governments play such an important and crucial role in the implementation of the SDGs, even if they're not part and directly involved in their design. But they are so strategic, so crucial in the implementation of the goals that if they want to play an efficient and rigorous role, they need up-to-date data and strategic visions to be able to address all the multi-crisis challenges that are happening nowadays and somehow hinder the implementation of the 2030 agenda. So the starting point is that it is recognized that local government, they play a crucial role, but to be an important, reliable, and helpful actor, they really need two things: data, so very crucial data, and financing. And this is where I think, for framing the discussion, the discussion stands. And we do have tools, right, that we provide local governments, cities to do that. And these are the voluntary local reviews, the voluntary subnational reviews, and these really are promising but evidence-based tools for assessing the SDG progresses. The moment we realize that we do have these tools, and these tools can provide evidence-based assessment, we are already one step forward for the role that local governments can play in the implementation of the 2030 agenda. What we always say is that we need local solutions for global challenges, and the VLRs, as one of these main tools, need to be really action-oriented, because if they are action-oriented, then it is easier to translate them into concrete actions. This is what is really needed, because if they need to be an important tool, an important help, an extra hand for government from the implementation of the 2030 agenda, they really need to be based and embedded in concrete actions. One issue that it's coming out a lot is that local governments need to take data-driven decisions. These voluntary local reviews, the local voluntary subnational reviews, need to go beyond the mere reporting and need to focus on actionable steps. So the analysis is good, the data is good, but it's not just a matter of reporting, it's a matter of understanding from the identification of the challenges of the gaps, how this could be an helpful tool for the way forward. And we need, through this voluntary local reviews and other tools, and need to encourage local governments to collect and use data to design evidence-based intervention to address, as I say, these challenges and for the communities. The other important part is that, again, local level action needs to be embedded and needs to be equipped by resources. As we say, what if we want the local action and the local government to be an important agent of change, transformational change? We need data and financing. And this is where the mobilization of resources is also important. We're trying to identify concrete project proposal through the voluntary local reviews that can provide a compelling basis for attracting funding and support from the various stakeholders. The moment we identify, we find that entry point for local communities, cities to attract funding, of course, through the we also need to identify the donors, right? But the ability to also come up with strong concept proposals is also very important, because they will allow cities and local governments to get the funding that are needed, right, for to keep assessing and being a strategic tool for the local for the implementation of the 2030 agenda. Another important issue I want to briefly touch upon is the strategic planning. The local and regional governments should regularly assess the progress, but in the view of understanding what the gaps are, what the main direction are, to be able to work together and in symbiosis and in synergy with the national government for the national and local development plans. Only with strong local development plans, the SDGs can take this boost so that the implementation can be translated also at the national level. For this to be able to to come up with strong strategic planning, we also need to invest in the institutional strengthening, right? So we need to equip our local governors, our local agent of change, if you want, by investing in training programs, technical assistance, knowledge sharing platform, because we really want to equip this staff with the tools to come up with a strong national planning, a vision, come up with the ability of designing project proposals to attract and mobilize resources, but also with the tools to, as I was telling you before, come up with very strong data-driven assessment. As you see, in a kind of a circular way, this dimension, which are the data, the strategic planning, and the finance, keep coming back. Another, just let me, and I'm almost concluding, focus again on the financing part. The financing space is shrinking, right? So local and regional governments really need to explore innovative financing mechanisms. I'm talking about public-private partnership, impact investment, and green bonds to mobilize the resources that are needed to fund and to identify priority projects. And also at the same time, local authorities can overcome funding constraints and accelerate progress toward the SDGs by utilizing climate finance strategically to support local development priorities and vice versa. All this, and I'd like to stress it, is not possible if the proper and correct stakeholders are not identified. Again, if we want local authorities, the local governments to be a strong agent of change, we need, as I was telling you, the pillars of data and finance, but this the partnership with the stakeholders, being the private sector, the civil society, academia, is crucial Otherwise, there will always be some gaps that will not be able to be filled. To conclude, as I said, it's very important to create these action-oriented and evidence-based VLRs to translate the SDGs into concrete action at the local level. To promote them, my region, Asia and the Pacific, there is really a need to have a focus on better planning, the project identification, the financing, the capacity building, and the collaboration among the different stakeholders. I hope this message came across quite clearly. And again, apologies for coming late and joining this very important event. Over to you, Jürgen.
Thank you very much, Ricardo. And thank you. I very much agree with your analysis. Data and financing is definitely two of the elements. I would add a third, just as a thinking, it's capacity. I mean, what we have really looked at when it comes to conducting VLRs or beyond VLRs, as also a colleague from Sweden mentioned, when it comes to localizing the SDGs, what goes beyond just VLRs. One major constraint has been the availability of capacity. What we have seen sometimes is particular smaller cities, smaller municipalities have not the municipalities, and they need the support through associations, through cooperation among local governments to support the process, sharing of experience, and see how we can jointly move together. So beside financing and data, definitely the capacity and the cooperation between local governments is a key actor, and the cooperation with private sector, academia. What we have seen, particularly in the rural environment, sometimes we have farmers, agricultural sector, the trade, bringing products to the market. Often the private sector is interested in the topic, and while economic concerns often comes first, the thinking among particular farmers is how do you preserve the land we are on has also increased. So the social and the environmental dimension has increased in recent years. But not to prolong the discussions here, let me pass on to the last speaker of the first block, and this is Julio. Julio is from the government of the province of Tucumán, Argentina. Julio, can I pass the floor to you? I will try to share the presentation on my side. I know that I'm usually more used to Teams and Zoom, so if it's not working well, let me know. But I'm trying to share your presentation.
Are you hearing me, Jürgen?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, perfect. Well, sorry that I was a little bit late. There was a misunderstanding regarding the schedule, time schedule. So, okay, what I'm going to, well, thanks very much, Jürgen, and all of you for the invitation. What I'm going to share with you is an experience of strategic planning within the framework of SDGs. That's what the province of Tucumán in Argentina has been doing for some years now. We have taken SDGs and try to organize a system of a planning system, government planning system. I'm not going to share with you all of it because I just can't. There's not enough time. But I'm going to share with you what I consider is the most useful way of taking a look and making a relation then with budgeting. The next one, please.
Hang on.
Here you can, first, this is an open page. This is a page that is open to the public. It's in the web, and anybody can take a look to it, okay? What we have done is that after, in the framework of SDGs, after establishing goals and quantitative goals, we have tried to organize all that the province was doing in terms of the executive power, the legislative power, and the research sector, and try to put all that together in relation to each goal of the SDGs, to each target, excuse me. So we have come to organize, as you can see there, and we have been doing this for like 7, 8 years. We have put together all 767 actions by the executive power. We have found related to them 1,800 laws by the legislative power. And we have come also to find more than 900 projects from research projects, from universities and research institutes. That's what you are seeing in that graphic. The next one, please.
Hang on. Does it move to the next?
Yes, yes, please, Jürgen. Yes.
Okay.
Okay, there you can see that by each goal, we have that number of government policies, laws, research projects. We have also in the last 2 years been working with firms and with social organizations, but that's still in its starting moment. So it has not been developed well yet. But the three first ones that I mentioned to you and that you can see there are very well settled so far. The next one, findings. There you can see what we have found and what seems to be important for our work in the government. On the vertical line, you are see the SDGs, okay, from 1 to 17. And then in the horizontal line, you can see each ministry and how many projects for each goal they have been developing and working. And there you can see that there's no, that for each goal, different ministries are working in the relation. So the goals are not the policies that each ministry are developing are not related to what originally seems to be their task, because the way we have related each program is that we're related to the different goals that the program has an impact. So when you do that, then you can find out that a program that may be related to health, to the Ministry of Health, it does not only have an impact on health, but it also have an impact on the area of education. Then let's say on SDG number 4. And that's what you are seeing in this graphic. The way that different programs has it from different ministries have an impact on different goals. So it's very strong. It's very strong because there you can see that there's no goal that can be obtained by only one set of policies from one ministry. It can only be obtained if we put together all those policies from different ministries. So let me show you the next one, please, Jürgen. See, this is the way you can find in the web, in our page. After we have done all this work, then the page will show you the goal, the target that is specified for our country, and then under each of these company, CSO, executive power, there you will, if you do click, let's say, on executive power, which is in your right side, you find there all the programs by different ministries. The same you can do for laws, and the same you can do for research projects. So the web, the page is very strong in two different ways. One, it has a strong coordination potential, you see, because it will show under each target the different programs that different ministries are doing. The same for the laws and the same for the research projects. So it has a potential for coordination, which is very strong. Second, it also shows, and this is more related to budgeting, it also shows what may be overlapping programs. We have found, in fact, once we have done this work, that there are projects from different ministries that overlap. That means that they are doing something very similar. So actually, you know, it was not necessary one or two of them, because one of them, let's say, with strengthening only one, you know, it was enough for the impact that that policy wanted to have. So number one, coordination. Number two, overlapping. This is what this work is showing us, and at this point, it has been very important in our planning at home. Finally, let me see the next one. I think that this is the last one. Yes. One final thing. In the last 6 months, we have come with all the academic sectors that we showed all those projects. We have come, talked to them. We have put them in contact with our ministers, and we have come together with a plan for science and technology in our province. And we have settled priorities that the government could help eventually for those projects that we have put together in the frame of the SDGs and in the frame of what I have just showed to you. So this is what I wanted to share. It's an experience. It's an experience that we have come with. It has been very useful for us. It's also an experience that can be transmitted, and I hope it's clear, and I hope that they can answer if it's not clear.
Thank you, Julio. This was well, I think the third time I saw a similar presentation from you, and I think it's always inspiring. I always get a little bit of a message on what Tucumán is doing and how we share this experience. I'm sorry, I have some technical problems sharing the screen. I can see it on one side, but I cannot share the presentation in presentation mode for some technical difficulties I experienced. But this concludes the first block on evidence-based planning and sustainable development. We have now a second block focusing on financing. And let me pass on the moderation role to Daniel. And would like to introduce Daniel. He is a Senior Economic Affairs Officer on our Financing for Development Office, who has been working in particular with several municipalities on advancing their fiscal space and seeing how can they make best use of their financial resources to advance the sustainable development goals. I pass on the floor. Daniel, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jürgen. A real pleasure to be here today. this topic of subnational finance or local development finance is very exciting and very important. And I hear many references already in other sessions to this. Why is it important? Because we know that local and regional governments are responsible for over 65% of the SDGs and targets, and they are already in developed countries responsible for over 60% of public investments, and worldwide around 40%, and it's growing. So we know they are playing an important role for the SDGs. In developed countries, they have also more resources to meet their requirements. But what we see, of course, is that in many developing countries, especially in LDCs, cities and local governments are very much in charge of a lot with very little resources. So we see decentralization happen in some countries, in others more than in some more than others. But what we see a lot is that the mandates come without the finance. What are the sources of finance? Of course, we have fiscal transfers from the central government. We have own source revenues like taxes and user fees. And we also have the idea of accessing finance privately from capital markets. We should note, however, that finance has to be repaid. These are loans, right? And it's not always easy for governments to do that, but we have to think about innovative ways. And I think this panel is going into that direction. I'm especially also happy to hear about Kenya's experience. I will introduce all the panels, but we have also someone that has worked on infrastructure asset management, which is a new area UNDESA is focusing on the local government level. It brings in this idea of, how do we ensure financing is there for the long term once the infrastructure is built? How do we ensure that we can reduce costs and increase revenue with our infrastructure? So this idea of infrastructure, as I mentioned, will also fall under today's panel. But let me start with Lance Joel, our first panelist. He's the CEO of South Africa Local Government Association in Salga. Lance, are you here? Can you begin with your presentation? There are many people.
No, thank you very much.
Great.
Lance is not available. It's Teboho Matlo.
Okay. You're presenting on his behalf?
Yes, I'm presenting on his behalf.
Wonderful. Good to have you. Please go ahead, introduce yourself, and then please go ahead.
Yes, my name is Teboho Matlo. I'm responsible for international programs and partnership, and I'm an SDG champion for South Africa Local Government Association. So I'm not sure whether I can be able to share the presentation. Can I be given the rights there? Because I didn't send it earlier on. Are we allowed to share?
I ask our colleagues from DSCG, who are the administrators of the Zoom account, to please give Tebogo rights to share. The alternative would be for Jürgen to share, but he just told us he has some technical problems on his end. So,
can you see my screen now?
Not yet.
Not yet. We ask the colleagues to see whether we can make him a presenter.
Let me talk to it. I know it's a technical issue. Sharing a screen. Yes. Share a screen. Stop sharing.
I think now it is working. We don't see the slides yet. We see your team's picture.
You see the slide.
There you go. Wonderful. Yes. It's just go into presentation mode and we're.
Yeah, let me apologize on behalf of the COO. He's caught up in another meeting. But this is where we had to make it a means that as local government, for us to align with the budget, here are the things that we were working on while we were supporting municipalities, that we need to identify local priorities and needs. And in South Africa, there's a document called IDP, Integrated Development Plan, which is a municipal document strategy for it to be able to implement their goals. So you have to integrate that into budget planning so that we incorporate the budgeting planning process and ensuring alignment with local authorities and their priorities. So we use the budget line with specific SDG targets to track expenditure, which we did with the 10 cities that we supported throughout our program, which we started in August last year. But also we prioritize resource allocation as part of the issues that are happening in local government with the high impact initiatives that address few SDG targets. If you are aware, local government target is SDG number 11, but all of them are aligned to what's happening in local government because of the sector. That's where everything happens there. The key one is point 7, where we have to engage with stakeholders, because part of the work, it requires us to be inclusive, to ensure that civil society are also participating, but more on research, where we've got universities that are also working with us. The key issue also is how we leverage data to inform the budget decision. And I'm glad you raised the issue on asset management, because that's the only way to track progress and optimize resource allocation. We have a report that is called Section 88 from Treasury, which we are aligning the SDG to that report, so that we don't find ourselves reporting on different things, but also aligning with the budget that municipalities they've put. The key one also is accountability and transparency, which requires for budget performance, because every time municipalities are required to have what we call a council meeting to report on what we call service delivery and budget implementation plan. The building capacity skills, it's also one of the issues that we need to work on based on research-based management. The innovative one is very key because of the sector, how it relates to all the SDGs. Here's one of the things that we also tackle on how to improve and attract more investment, linking SDGs with other countries that are working on. We are working on reviewing our strategy to work on what we call city-to-city cooperation, where it will be easy when municipalities are supported based on that particular part. But you put the budget based on the financial plans and budget that is aligned with strategic priorities. So we are strengthening that to our municipalities, but also provide the regular, accurate, and detailed financial reports to stakeholders, which is one of the key things that we were emphasizing in our VLR-VSR program, but also establish effective internal controls to ensure accountability and prevent fraud, which is SDG number 16. For stronger institution, you have to ensure that at least there's accountability, there's controls, there are systems that are in place. Building strong credit ratings will assist most of our municipalities. They were downgraded by different rating systems, the Fiji, but we are working with one that we're gonna put for the next program, which is Ekurhuleni. That's where the biggest airport is, but we want to use that as part of the credit ratings to ensure that at least they can be able to attract investment. So we have been explaining to the cohorts that were part of us to work on that. Developing a skilled, competent financial team is one of the key issues. We have an auditor general who always makes sure that he audits our municipalities, but also providing a business-friendly environment, which is very key to reduce bureaucracy and red tapes. That we want to provide incentives to attract businesses in our municipalities. The technology, I spoke about it, but the key one, Chair, is that we need to build stronger relationship so that we provide a collaborative relationship with investors and other stakeholders. The risks are there in finance. Our municipalities, most of them are not, when they get the audit outcome, which is more on unqualified audit opinion, we are still supporting them through our program, which is called MASP. other things here, Chair, I'm not gonna touch little bit because of my time, but here is one of the things that I thought maybe I will work on. It's the recommendations is that we need to expand joint mechanism for VLR, VSR, so that and VNR synchronization. Yes, the national has included us, but we need to work on with that so that we can be able to propel subnational reporting and enhance government capacities to accelerate the implementation. But the challenge is that it's voluntarily. So we really need to have our own means to ensure that we meet the objectives and resources for the capabilities. But the one thing that I wanted to share with the team here is asset management is very key for implementation of SDGs, especially at local government. And leadership must play a key role to ensure that there is that buy-in when you align the work that you are doing on SDGs, but be able to embark on the project of developing VSR and VLR in a way that the inputs from nationally are going to help us to strengthen the localization. The previous speaker before me spoke about what departments are doing. So that's the model that we also working on to ensure that at least when we need data on financing, on projects that they are doing, departments are the one that must be able to validate that report. But they must start at the beginning of the work, not while we are coming to an end. The issue of promoting inclusive decision-making process is key for communities and fostering sustainable development. We have worked with civil society called African Monitoring, which it did assist for stakeholder engagement and also unpacking the service delivery of municipalities. The last part that I thought, Chair, I need to focus on is when we want to leverage financial resources for development, we need to address the issue of infrastructure that is resilient to climate change and adaptation. And we are also affected by the storms, by the cyclones in the country, especially along the Indian Ocean. So we think that finance is very key for us to accelerate the SDGs. But bear in mind, when we go and engage municipalities, they also keep on telling us that it's voluntarily. But we are saying, yes, it's voluntarily, but we want to assist you to align your budgets, your financing, your projects with the SDGs. Chair, thank you very much for the opportunity, and my apology once more. If you look at the right side of my presentation, that's where we talk about access to basic services, where the census from 1996 to current now, we have made a progress, even though we've got a challenge with electricity, but that infrastructure is very key for us to keep businesses to come and invest in the country. So we are working on that as we are able to ensure that the households are connected, but the business, it's also very key. The issues of water as a key of infrastructure, it's one thing that we also are working on. In 2022, after the census, Chair, is that 82% of our households in the country had access to piped water and inside their dwelling, which is their yard. These are the census that we got from 2022, but we are working with stats to develop even a dashboard that aligns the budget, the SDG, and the implementation as part of the monitoring. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you so much, Tebogo. That was a very concise presentation. You touched upon a whole action plan for strengthening SDG-oriented finance, starting, of course, with the right public financial management practices, setting clear goals and targets, and aligning those then with the SDGs, the use of data and analytics. Also a strong emphasis, I notice, which I see more and more on the issue of infrastructure asset management, which helps keep the service and financial value intact of our infrastructure assets, which also means making them more resilient, which then will strengthen your financial viability again to access innovative resources that you mentioned as well. And of course, the strong connection to the role of local VNRs in helping achieve those, and document those actions. So I would like to give the floor now to, and I apologize if I pronounced the name incorrectly, Joao Diniz, Head of Accelerating Urban Transition Office at Cascais Ambiente, Cascais, Portugal. You have the floor, sir. So just double checking. Joao Diniz, are you here? I see you. I see someone by that name. If I can ask you to unmute yourself and start your presentation. Hello, Joao Diniz. I'm not sure if you can hear us. Maybe there are connection problems. Jürgen, I would suggest that then in the meantime, we move on with Jacob, if that is okay with you.
Yes, it's fine. I see Joao, but I don't know. He seems not to react.
Yeah, that's. I also saw Jacob. Let me, while Jacob gets ready, also introduce Jacob. We have in the program, I think we mentioned Bernadette Wanjala. She is teaching right now, but it is really Jacob who is the main presenter, as he's the Assistant Director for Asset Management, a topic we just spoke about from Kenya, Kimusu County. So I would just add that Kenya has been one of the pilot countries for UNDESA in its collaboration with UNOPS and UNCDF to really train local government officials on this new discipline of infrastructure asset management according to the UN handbook. And we have worked very, very hard with many countries on this, and they have worked even harder in bringing the teachings in the workshop and the handbook and the toolkits to fruition by really changing the way of doing business. And we will learn a little bit from Jacob about what that meant for his county and what that meant for some of the priority assets that they have identified as priority areas for better, enhanced, strengthened practices on infrastructure asset management. Jacob, I've seen the presentation. It looks very interesting. Are you ready to share it with the audience?
Yes, I am ready.
Wonderful. Over to you, Jacob.
Kindly, can I get the presentation? Something. Hello, Jürgen.
Are you able to share, or do you need sharing rights, Jacob?
Yeah, I've given you. Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you so much. My name is Jacob Obera, Assistant Director of Assets Management, Kisumu County. The next slide, please. Next slide.
Are you controlling the slide, Jacob, or is Jürgen doing it?
No, it is Jürgen doing it.
Oh, okay.
Thank you. Kenya has 47 devolved counties, county government based on the promulgation of the new constitution. Kisumu is one of them, and I thank God that we also had Nakuru City presenting earlier before by George. Kisumu County is further divided and devolved into city, and we also have a water and sewerage company and a city within the county. So it is a county that has rural population and rural administration, and the one for the city is City of Kisumu that we maintained. Now we have 4 new municipalities that have been created thanks to the provision of the law. The new governor appointed 4 new municipalities, that is Ahero, Moroni, and Maseno, based on the threshold as per the Cities and Urban Areas Act.
The population of Kisumu is 1.5 million, 1.1 million. That is based on Kenya National Bureau of Statistics of 2019, with an urban population of 560. Our main agricultural activities are large-scale sugarcane farming, rice farming, fishing, and moribund air transport, lake transport, railway, and we are also connected by road. Kisumu County is also a member of the Lake Region Economic Bloc that has 23 members, 23 county members. These are counties that borders the Lake Victoria. In terms of area, the Kisumu covers 580,000 kilometers squared, out of which 208,000 kilometers squared is covered by the water, that is Lake Victoria. Administratively, we have 7 sub-counties and 35 wards. These wards are elective wards that represent people's representative. In Kenya, we call them members of county assembly per ward, and we have gone further to devolve these wards into villages. So each ward has 2 villages. So we have devolved the functions to villages level. And these villages, we anticipate to have village councils for better engagement with the locals. The climate, we have 33 degrees to the highest Celsius and 25 degrees to the lowest. Our county budget is 13 billion. That is based on this financial year that has started in July. Kisumu is guided by, more so in our planning purpose, by the County Integrated Development Plan, that is the CIDP, the 3rd generation. Remember, since Constitution 2010, we have had 3 counties in place. So this is the 3rd strategic tool for 2023 to 2027. And all this is framed by the global objective to found in the current SDGs, the Agenda 2063 of the African Union, and the national term of Vision 2030. Every budgeting item, every action is guided by the CIDP plan. Kisumu also bidded and hosted the 9th African cities. The conference was themed by the role of intermediary cities in Africa in the implementation of Agenda 2030 of the United Nations and African Union 2063. The pictures there, one is the logo of the Kisumu County government, and the other one was the logo for Afri-Cities. Thanks, UCLG, you were also represented, and we much obliged. Next slide, please. Sorry, I can't see this. Okay. Kisumu County was among the 9 selected subnational units in infrastructure asset management that were conducted by UNDESA. And the key diagnostics tool that we highlighted the strengths and the weaknesses. One of them was an incompetent asset management register, which the register found then was more focusing on furnitures, motorcycles, motor vehicles, office equipment, and critical data that were key in the service delivery, such as land, market, water, sanitation infrastructure, were either incomplete or missing. The emphasis, therefore, is on the acquisition of assets, not about maintenance and disposal. So what we are saying is that we were most budgeting for acquisition, but in terms of maintenance and disposal, little was budgeted for. Now, weakness in maintenance of assets. Most maintenance is reactive. We maintain after the breakdowns, and budgetary allocations for maintenance is limited.
Jacob, I'm sorry to interrupt. Would you mind turning on your camera so we can all see you?
My camera, I thought, is on.
For some reason, it is not on. We don't see you. Perhaps if you turn it off and on again. But no, if it doesn't work, no worries. It will be just nice to see your face while we listen to your interesting presentation.
Let me see if I can turn back my camera. You still don't see me?
Unfortunately not, but it's okay. Don't worry. We'll maybe later in the discussion you'll be able to. Please continue. Don't worry about Jacob. Please continue.
I'm trying to get back to the slides, but I can't view
we can see yours. Oh, okay, but we can see your slides still. I guess it's on your own screen that you're trying to find them. They're still on the, if you click on Teams, you will see them.
I click on Teams.
Sorry, not Teams, Zoom, of course. We're using Zoom, not Teams. Yeah, we can all see your slide. So if you go back into Zoom, you should be able to see it too.
Fortunately, I can't see it from this end.
It may be minimized, so maybe if you look in your computer, it might be a little window that you just need to, you can press on a green arrow and then you exit it and you maximize it again. If you see a small square somewhere, you may have minimized it.
Okay, get me back to the slides, please. Maybe, I don't know. I can see is on the slide. Sorry, I'm not techno-savvy as such.
No worries. We can wait. These things can be very tricky.
Okay, thank you. Now, now on the capital planning, we were planning through medium term. Sorry for that. The annual development plans and the development budget not adequate for capital financing. Remember, this one is more guided by the CIDP, that is the County Integrated Development Plan, that is a 5-year strategic plan. Awareness of commitment to asset management. The asset management unit is by an asset manager. Currently, I'm the one acting. Asset management policies were found not to be adequate, as if the county has a draft asset management policy, and it is the opinion that we align our asset management policy with the national assets and liabilities management policies, which we are currently underdoing and just awaiting approval. Asset management has also been mainstreamed in our CIDP. So all these assets that we are trying to acquire are drawn from the CIDPs. Asset management information system that we are using currently is just Excel based and not automated as such. And we are working towards having an complete automation on asset management that can track, can even locate where the assets are. Procurement of assets related services, mostly open and competitive through open tenders or closed or quotations based on the Public Procurement and Disposal Act. That is a strong national procurement law that we are using. So the asset management action plan for Kisumu, we focused on two main assets, that is fecal wastes and solid waste management. So these ones, next slide, please. Jack, next slide, please. Now, the reason why we had identified these two infrastructure, fecal wastes goes along with the water and sanitation, that is SDG 6, and the other one is solid waste management under SDG 11 on cities and human settlement on the urbanization. Now, if we start with the fecal waste management infrastructure, currently we require a connectivity to 30,000 households out of 45, meaning only 30% of city population is connected, that is the household. So we require an additional 30,000 connections. The negative effect of this, the loss of aquatic life due to water body pollution, prevalence of waterborne diseases, reduced access to sanitary facility, increased cost of water treatment, high level of siltation in the lake, blockage of drainages that leads to flooding, air pollution due to polluted waters, and to an extent, we have a smelling lake. The photos that I've shared there before on slide number 3 is about the greenish, the lake that's a bit look greenish. That is the extent of pollution caused on these on-site sanitations. Now, our priority is to construct a fecal sludge treatment plant extension of sewer lines to the last mile connectivity to 10,000 households in phase 1 and phase 2 like that. This one is to avoid the adoption of this on-site sanitation. Again, we are also adopting, and we find it necessary to have simplified sewerage system, that is condominium, and an extension of 100 kilometers along that will assist in these peri-urban areas for sewerage. Kindly minimize, or I can't see the slides, minimize the slides to fit inside the, okay, thank you. So that is all about fecal waste. Now, in solid waste management, can you scroll up, please, Jagan? Thank you. Now, solid waste management, Kisumu is one of the solid waste management is one of the key development challenges in Kisumu City. Remember, Kisumu City is the third largest city after Nairobi, then Mombasa, the coastal town, then Kisumu. And the total waste that we generate in a day is 385 tons. And I've classified them as under industrial, market, commercial, clinical waste, and the likes. Our average collection per day is 30%, meaning that 70% of the solid waste management generated remains within. And this 30% is both for the county collections and even the private collectors. On average per day, we collect 300. On average, our collection efficiency is 30%. That is, we collect 115 tons per day. And we also need a comprehensive strategic response for solid waste management, which is lacking. Or we need solid waste management system in major. Our solid waste management system is majorly linear, that is comprising of just collection, transportation, crude dumping, and very minimal opportunity for material recovery and value additions. Remember, we are anticipating to have a sanitary landfill, not a dumping site. Our key priority is fast-tracking the implementation of Kisumu Integrated Solid Waste Management Plan that was done in 2020 in collaboration with the donor partners. This plan helps to promote establishment of facilities and incentive for cleaner production, waste recovery, recycling, and reuse, and also promote waste use, recycling, and recycling initiative. Remember these two assets that we have identified, both for solid waste and fecal waste. We also charge, in the event that we are having these assets, we also benefit from the revenue collection from the conservancy fee that we charge on sewerage services, and also dumping revenue. I mean, we also generate revenue from collections from every household. And back to slide number 2, kindly. The second slide. Yeah, the third slide. Now, these two pictures, one is the Kachok dump site. This is the dump site that we relocated. So you can see it is a huge mountain of garbage, and we relocated it 2 years ago to a new dumping site called Kasese. And we still have challenges in terms of transport because Kasese is almost 25 kilometers from the CBD. Now, the second picture is about the Lake Victoria pollution. That is the lake, and you can see how it is a bit greenish. That is the extent of pollution based on this uncontrolled sewerage and managed sewerage systems. Now, based on asset management, based on financial management systems that we have adopted as a county, apart from the CIDP is a 5-year development plan, and every year we make a budget. That is the annual based on the annual development plan. How do we arrive at the annual development plan? We go to the community back in an exercise called public participation for them to identify projects every year, and those projects form part of our budget every year. So it is the community that identified these projects based on them. For us, it is just a matter of ranking them and prioritizing them based on our budget provisions. Remember, we also have the county has, for the time being, our budget is 13 billion. And based on this budget, we have come out with the exercises that will generate more revenue for the county in the next financial year. For example, we have also formed a revenue board, which is a bit independent from the county government management. And this revenue board, when we piloted in the first year, that is 2023-2024, our revenue, on-source revenue, was 1.2 billion. So upon the inauguration of the revenue board, the collection improved from 1.2 billion to 1.4 billion. So there was an extra 200 million that was collected. So we anticipate in this year's financial year to generate 3.7 billion with the strategies that have been put in place. Two, the county has also we have also been credit rated by global agents, and we are anticipating very soon to start floating green bonds and the like. So we'll have the authority now to borrow from we borrow from the public or private borrowings to finance our projects. Otherwise, we are very grateful for this, and we hope to see more for development purposes. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jacob. I apologize for throwing you off track a little bit by asking you to turn on your camera, but this was a very, very interesting presentation. And what I get out of it is that, you have really, after the assessment of infrastructure asset management practices, your county was one of them, of course. Yes. You've really changed the way of doing asset management. You have not only, improved the data collection, you've not only integrated asset management in your development plan, but you've also developed concrete action plans on infrastructure assets, and you've already seen, the results of it with, revenues increasing as infrastructure assets function better, as they become more reliable. It affects your financing capacity. And you even mentioned that you want to go into green bonds and other innovative instruments. So this shows why infrastructure asset management is such a financing issue. Now, yes. Let's see. Thank you so much again, and we look forward to continue our work with you. See if Mr. Denis is available, our last panelist.
Thank you.
Thank you again, Jacob. Mr. Denis, are you available? We see him here, but I don't know if he can hear us. I will revert to you, Jürgen, for a guidance.
I think at this stage, also since we are slightly running late, let me see that we can move forward with the next remark, and then we see if we can get a presentation or we can share online from Mr. Denis, how we can share his presentation maybe through the channels and who have connected, that we see what we can provide to participants to share the experiences from Cascade. But at the moment, I didn't see that he was able to connect. In that case, let me now go to the concluding remarks for the session. Thank you very much, Daniel, for part 2. And I would like to invite Ms. Laura Petrella, the Chief of Planning, Finance, Economic Section of UN Habitat, for her closing remarks. Yes. Laura? Yes.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes. Yes, very, very good. No, thank you, and very good morning, afternoon, or evening to the participants, the colleagues, and the presenters in particular. So it is an honor for me to be here today to close the 3rd edition of the VLR-VSR Days. My name, as has been said, is Laura Petrella, and I lead in UN Habitat, the section working on planning, finance, and economy. And I am speaking actually really on behalf of UN Habitat, first of all, to extend our gratitude to UNDESA, UCLG, and the UN Regional Economic Commissions, for the continued and really valuable collaboration, not only on these particular days, but more in general, supporting the different tiers of government and the stakeholder in the localization of the SDGs. So at this point, as we close the days and this very rich set of presentation and discussion, it's a little bit of a moment to take stock on where we are and what are the next steps. So this year, the high-level political forum calls all of us to reinforce the 2030 agenda and eradicating poverty in times of crisis. It's a very important imperative, and of course, all of us are committed to this. And we have seen at the high-level political forum and in these days the commitment of cities, local and regional governments, and the associations in advancing exactly this commitment. We also, however, and despite all this dedication and the concrete effort, we also see that local action is still not understood very much as integrated with the global agendas as it should be. So VLR and VSR have really proven, and I think this presentation today and yesterday have really proved how VLR and VSR are helpful in integrating local SDGs action within national and global debates. And this has been really the effort also during the high-level political forum. But we all know that more remains to be done. So at this, in closing today, I think we can maybe pick, or we would like to pick on some of the key messages that we can take away from this session, and the one that have preceded it during this year edition. So first of all, we now understand well that the VLR, the VSR, and also the VNR help to create effective multi-level governance systems for SDG implementation. We have seen excellent examples on how this is actually done, and the integration is achieved from countries as diverse as Ecuador, Nepal, Tajikistan, and Serbia, in the presentation in particular yesterday. Also, the second point is that the VLR and VSR, by emphasizing transparency, accountability, and inclusive participation, really can help to bridge the gap between institution and the public and support a renewed social contract. And we have seen this from intervention from the UN Association of Tanzania, Irbid Municipality, the National Union of Local Governments in Costa Rica, among others. So I think as far as the third, let's say, key message of this session is, of course, the importance of building on the findings of the VLR and the VSR to deliver effective urban basic services and safeguard the community well-being. And I think this is also sort of expanding the scope and the impact of these exercises to really reach delivering results for the communities and for the residents of cities. Nakuru City, Ramallah, Santa Fe, Udon Thani, Brisbane, I think have all spoken to this particular effort. And finally, in this last session, we have been made very much aware that local government cannot provide services and implement the SDGs without adequate financing and supporting policies. and that this requires evidence-based decision. I think we have seen this at different levels that need to be grounded in empirical data and factual information. So we have been hearing of how this can inform policy, project strategies, and how finance actually needs this to be directed to the right investment and expenditures. So I think the presentation of SALGA and OECD, the province of Tucumán, have been quite telling in this respect. So as we close, we need to remember or remind ourselves that last year we were able to count 218 VLR published at the time when we had the VLR-VSR Days. Today they are more than 300 worldwide. In terms of VLR, and then the VSR also are about 44. But this is very important progress. However, if we step back, we realize that the number are actually quite limited compared to the overall number of cities, towns, and municipalities and regions around the world. And we are still talking of a drop in the ocean somehow. So how can we support the cities and local administration, particularly the ones that have limited capacities?
Laura, just half a minute and we should come to an end.
Yes.
Thank you.
So I just wanted to mention as UN Habitat that we have developed the action-oriented VLR methodology, which is a step-by-step guide for developing VLR. So this can be actually a tool that can be further used for planning and decision-making, etc. And the UN Regional Commission also have developed regional guidelines to contextualize that to specific regional context. And then the nexus between reporting and financing local development should really be strengthened. I think we start discussing this, but we really take note that the evidence that we can gather with the report needs to support more and more decision-making in terms of financing. So at this point, I just would like to stress that we have quite a way in front of us, and in particular the next milestones in our collective agenda. First of all is in September, the Summit of the Future, where it will be a very important moment to take stock for the ahead of the World Social Summit, and then the 12th edition of the World Urban Forum, where I think this topic, given the theme of the World Urban Forum, which is focusing on localization, will very much be in focus. So I just conclude inviting all of us to continue on this path of collaboration and strengthening these processes at the subnational and local level. And thank everybody for the very rich discussion and very rich case studies that have been presented and experiences. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Laura, for these concluding remarks from Habitat. May I now invite Mr. Amsan Sibanda, the Chief of the National Strategies and Capacity Building Branch of the Division of Sustainable Development Goals, UNDESA. Amsan, you have the floor.
Thanks you again. Good afternoon, colleagues. Good evening. I know we are all in different parts of the world. First, I would like to thank our partners, UN Habitat, UCLG, and the United Nations Regional Commissions for co-organizing this third edition of the VLR-VSR Days and for inviting our partnership. Let me also thank all the distinguished representatives of local and regional governments, UN entities, stakeholders, and experts who have shared their experiences over the course of the VLR-VSR Days and inspired us with their actions and commitment to making the SDGs a reality for all at all levels. I would like to thank all participants for taking time off from your busy schedules to be with us. It is your commitment to the 2030 Agenda and its Sustainable Development Goals that will make a difference in the communities that we live in. Ladies and gentlemen, as we all know, with only 17% of the SDG targets on track, the world will not meet most of the global goals by their deadline without undertaking transformative change. From the opening session of this year's high-level political forum, we have all heard how multiple intersecting crises have compounded existing challenges, disrupting and even reversing progress on many sustainable development goals, with particularly severe impacts for those living in poverty or vulnerable situations, leaving them further behind. In the search for solutions, the role of local and regional governments around the world in responding to these interrelated crises and in working to implement the Sustainable Development Goals has been recognized as central. We have certainly seen this recognition during the current high-level political forum, which has included an unprecedented number of events taking place, including official and special events, VNR labs, side events, many organized by national governments, UN entities, and other stakeholders. Indeed, during the VLR-VSR Days, participants have shared many examples of how voluntary local reviews and voluntary subnational reviews are not just reports to be prepared and then end up on a shelf gathering dust. Rather, these reports and the processes leading up to their preparation are leading to game-changing action, contributing to strengthened multi-level governance and cross-sectoral collaboration, innovations in data collection, including through the use of geospatial data and the development of SDG portals, to building and rebuilding trust between communities and their leaders and between levels of government, and to stronger coordination with key stakeholders, including in the scientific community. When their findings are recommendations, and when their findings and recommendations are taken seriously on board by local and regional governments, they lead to improved service delivery and are contributing to evidence-based policymaking and the linking of localization efforts to national development planning and financing. It is because of such actions and contributions that as the world seeks solutions and approaches to turbocharge SDG implementation, the role of local governments is now understood to be central. Ladies and gentlemen, as we approach critical upcoming events, including the Summit of the Future in September, and in 2025, the World Social Forum and the 4th International Financing for Development Conference, your leadership is more important than ever. We need your continued support in scaling up commitments and strengthening your collaboration across levels of government and with key stakeholders to expedite the achievement of the SDGs. From UNDESA, we remain committed to supporting SDG acceleration through multi-level governance and coordination for sustainable development, and through SDG localization. We believe the voluntary local and subnational review global movement has already, in its few years, brought tangible benefits to local communities around the world. And we believe that these voluntary reports are often a first step for local and regional governments in terms of SDG localization, and can and should be a jumping off point for further action in terms of planning, financing, and leaving no one behind. The VLRs and VSRs movements have also been characterized by a generosity of spirit between local governments. Peer learning is central to capacity building on SDG localization, and I wish to recognize the enthusiasm with which so many local and regional governments have been willing to take the time to share their experiences and best practices with peers within their countries, their regions, or in far-off parts of the world, including here during the 3rd edition of the VLR-VSR Days. At UNDESA, we are committed to continuing to support your endeavors. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Amson, for the concluding remarks from DESA. They are now asked the last speaker of the session, the Assistant Secretary General, Jordi Pasqual, from the UCLG. Jordi, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Congratulations, Jürgen and Daniel, for the conduction of this session. Congratulations to all the speakers. 6 messages as a concluding summary. First, the context of the SDG localization. We come from a very positive experience at the high-level political forum where SDG localization is very present. But this was not the case 10 years ago, where local governments had to struggle to secure spaces for participation. Today, we have proved that the VLR and the VSR days are wonderful proof of this increased recognition, and the VLR and the VSRs have proven to be innovative frameworks. They haven't reached the way we approach sustainable development, ensuring that all levels of governments are engaged. Second, the VLRs and the VSRs have empowered local and regional governments to take ownership of their development agendas. And we have seen that when local governments, regional governments knock on the door of national governments with concrete proposals and tools, they have paved the way for improved collaborations. Let me mention the associations that have directed parts of the reviews, the VNRs in Ecuador and Mauritania. More to do. If we are to enhance the relevance and the effectiveness of public policies at all levels, we need to harness the potential of VLR and VSR processes into the voluntary national reviews, the VNRs. We need to take advantage. We need to synchronize, as Teboco Matlow from Salga said, and as you yourself, Jürgen, mentioned, data, finance, and capacity building. Capacity building is a key word in both directions, up, down, and bottom up. Generosity, long-term vision shared by all. Third, empowering people. Empowering people. The VLRs and VSRs are exercises to empower people, engaging citizens, engaging groups. Frida Johnson from Tierras Comune with the local exercise, but also with the Nordic VSR, have provided wonderful examples. In an era marked by polarization, misinformation, decreased confidence in local authorities, national authorities, these efforts are instrumental in building trust, and they hold the key to restore faith in the governance processes. And let me go to the 4th point. Only working together will we guarantee the well-being of all, and the need we leave no one and no place behind. VLRs and VSRs are political processes, and the priority in the political work is to create the conditions to leave no one and no place behind. 5th, data. Strong effort to improve data generation, collection, and analysis. I was impressed. I am impressed by the work of Tucumán, brilliantly explained by Julio Saguir. Stefano Marta from OECD, impressed by the data you manage, the global burden of disease on exposure to air pollution, or the MODIS to monitor urban heat island effects. And Jacob from Kisumu explaining the asset management action plans, but also Tebogo from Salga explaining the integrated development planning and the list of 12 of the 12 points. This is not the end. Let me conclude. This is just to be continued. It is a pleasure for UCLG, the global organization of United Cities and Local Governments, to have co-organized this 3rd edition of the VLR-VSR Days, together with our always accompanying partners, UN Habitat and UN DESA. We move forward. UCLG is determined to continue to build on this momentum. Together, we can turn aspirations into reality and create a world where sustainable development is shared and it is an attainable goal for everyone. Let me also thank you, colleagues in UCLG that have been working in all the 4 sessions. Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup, muchas gracias, and thank you very much again. Jürgen, back to you.
Thank you very much, Jordi. I think just one big lesson from my side, working together and the trust we have developed over the past years, that we're working together, that is built on the trust we have developed over the last years. And we hope that the trust also, when it comes to working together between national, provincial, subnational, between subnational governments, it's key to move forward. And let me just maybe one last word, and saying there's no moment to spare if we want to move forward and make the SDGs reality. So we have to work together and make the SDGs reality to the extent possible we can. I mean, we know it's going to be challenging, but let's keep working together. Thank you so much for UCLG, for the colleagues. I think this one concludes the fourth and last session of the VLR-VSR Days. I would appreciate continuously working together, and looking forward for hearing from the participants further suggestion. And we are happy from DESER, from UCLG, and from Habitat, and all the partners from the regional commissions, from OECD, that we continue supporting local and national and provincial governments in a true spirit of partnership. Thank you, everyone. Right.